What's up? Aaron here, Canadian Looney. Let's get into this. This is Deputy Leader of the Opposition, Melissa Lantsman. She's a firecracker, having questions asked to her about why the opposition did vote for Carney's Bill C-5. It's interesting. Melissa Lantsman is fun to watch. David Cochrane, not so much. Watch how he always attacks and takes pot shots at the Conservatives every chance he gets. Doesn't do that to the Liberals. Let's get into this. David Cochrane, Deputy Leader, Melissa Lantsman. One-on-one. Let's go.
Oh, yeah.
Melissa Lantsman is the Conservative Deputy Leader, and she joins me now. Ms. Lantsman, good to see you again. Thank you for your time today.
Having me.
So C-5 is moving through the House of Commons with the support of the Conservatives. A major bill. Why was your party so willing to support the Carney Liberals on this?
Look, I think during the election, Canadians were, I think, loud and clear about wanting to see this country build big things. I think C-5 is a step in that right direction. But if you take it back for a second, there is a lot of things that stop us from getting projects built. There's a lot of regulation, there's a lot of red tape, and we continue to believe that getting rid of C-69, that getting rid of the tanker ban, that getting rid of the industrial carbon tax and the emissions cap is the only successful way. You cannot, if the problem is regulation, then writing laws to try to circumvent that regulation probably is worse, or is worse off than just getting rid of those regulations.
Okay, you said it's a step in the right direction.
It is
you
a
said
step.
Small, you had your
a small
step.
A small leap in the right direction.
But there are the criticism of C-5 before amendment and even since amendment is that it does give some pretty broad powers to the government to override some laws to move fast. Your party suggested some amendments. For example, you can't get around the Conflict of Interest Act.
Yeah, there was actually a lot of there. There's a Conflict of Interest Act. There was the Lobbying Act. There's making sure that ministers couldn't get around these things, and it was Conservatives that were there to make sure that was in the legislation, those amendments.
But there are still some broad powers there. So why wasn't that enough to stop your party from supporting it, given your concerns about the integrity of the government?
Yeah, well, look, we want to make sure that that any step in the right direction, any step that the government is taking, certainly one that was sort of out of our platform, that we would support that. And in this case, we think that this will lead to potentially building projects, but we're going to look at the results of all of this, and we continue again to believe that there are pieces of legislation that the Liberals brought in that are going to stop projects from being built. So we'll wait and see and pass judgment, but this is going to be measured on the results, and I'm glad to see that Conservative committee members that we had were there to put forward those amendments in that late night study to make sure that it isn't carte blanche in terms of power.
It is a remarkable shift, I think you would agree, to see after the way the last Parliament ended, to see the Conservatives and the Liberals working together to fast-track legislation.
I sat with you here, telling you that when there are things that are moving in the right direction, that Conservatives would support them. Legislation is written behind closed doors, and we want to make sure that Parliament puts that out into the open, make sure that there's a conversation about it, that Canadians are getting the best piece of legislation and the best deal for them. And so we'll always support things like tax cuts. I said that then, that remains the case today. And then when they fall short, and when there are problems, and when there are things to oppose, we will be there to oppose it, and we've done that. We've demanded a budget. We've demanded that they pay back the taxpayers for the money that they blew on Arrive scam. The contractors with the two guys in the basement that didn't actually do IT work that got all those contracts. We will be there to be the opposition on the things that matter.
Right, and I know this is what you said the last time we spoke here on the show you would do. It is still just notable to see it, considering.
I mean, I said it, and then it happened. I know you're not used to that. But,
no. I wasn't suggesting that. It's just there's a bit of whiplash with the tone change in Parliament on the way things are working. But you worked with them on this, getting this legislation through. It should get through the Senate. We believe by the end of next week or sometime soon after that. What sense do you have of what projects we will see. I know there's issues around the idea of a pipeline because of British Columbia and going through there and those challenges, but there's a whole suite of other things, right? Uranium mines in Saskatchewan, electrical interties between provinces, spur lines for railways. What is your sense of what they're prepared to do here?
Look, I don't have a sense of it, and I don't think Canadians have a sense of it because they haven't said as much. You know, he went to premiers. He said that there would be a list. There is still no list. There are still many questions rather than answers, and we've been the party of making sure that we develop our resources, that we build our Canadian economy. We'll continue pushing them in that direction. We want to create an economy that works for people, that works for workers, that works for those in each of those sectors, and that actually powers us forward. So we'll be there every step of the way, making sure to hold their feet to the fire, to explain to Canadians what's what and what's at stake and what they're actually going to do. We haven't seen that. You know what would have done that? A budget would have done that. And unfortunately, we didn't get that. We just got a table of estimates.
Well, a budget wouldn't have given us a list of projects, I don't think, on that point. I take your point, though, on the need for an update and clarity on the fiscal situation.
Man.
But on the projects, I just want to ask you about the BC situation, right? Because we do have David Eby saying he doesn't necessarily like the idea of a bitumen pipeline, certainly, going to Kitimat or Prince Rupert. The Prime Minister has said he wouldn't impose a project over the objections of a province. We have Indigenous groups upset with the pace and process around this legislation. How would you recommend they reconcile dealing with provinces and Indigenous groups if
there
there's
are
opposition?
long established processes in this country about consultations, and we've built pipelines before, and there are 43 million Canadians. There are a majority of those Canadians that want to see projects built, that want to see our energy reach other markets. And I would say that no one person and no one group has a veto in this country. And we hope that the Prime Minister makes good on his word to actually build things in this country.
When you look at the pushback, though, to the way this legislation was moved so quickly, you do see Indigenous groups, everyone from the ITK to the AFN, saying not necessarily opposition to the idea, but just the process. It's gone so fast. They never got to appear at committee. Things like this. Are you worried that the goodwill that exists to move rapidly on industrial development could result in a loss of goodwill with a lot of these particular groups who are now saying, hold on?
Well, I think there are a lot of groups that support this as well. So picking out necessarily the ones that don't isn't necessarily productive to the conversation. But I would say again, like long-established processes about consultation in this country, lots of safeguards and stopgaps in the system. And again, like there isn't one group in this country that's going to have a veto over the economic future and the building in this country.
We hope.
So the Conservatives have cooperated with the government on the tax cut, not as big as you'd like, but a step in the right direction. Consistent
Not
with the
even
principles.
close to as big.
No, but consistent with the principles you outlined.
$15
And again
a
on
month.
this. Mr. Poilievre is not here. We assume he will win his by-election in Battle River Crowfoot. Is this the approach we're going to see once Pierre Poilievre is back in Parliament and back as the official opposition
Look,
leader?
I think Pierre's going to spend the summer, obviously, gaining the trust of the people in Battle River Crowfoot, and we very much look forward to him being back in the House. But
Me too.
we are going to support the government where it makes sense, and we are going to oppose the government vigorously where they overstep or they don't go far enough, and we're going to call those things out. Mr. Carney has created lots of tall orders for himself in terms of the expectations that he needs to reach, and we're gonna look at this government based on results. We've done that up until now, and we'll do that going forward.
What expectations does Mr. Poilievre need to reach after losing the election and losing his seat? I mean, he's
shots at
attempting to make a
Poilievre
comeback.
all the time.
He will face a leadership review in Calgary in January. I mean, what does he need to do? What expectations does he need to meet to tell Conservatives that despite those two failures, he's still the right person going forward?
Well, look, I think in what you just outlined, you can't forget that we've rebuilt or we've reconfigured the Conservative coalition. We've had people who have never voted for us. We've got young people and workers and different parts of that coalition. 8 million votes, 24 more seats. That's a really good place to start from. But of course, like any party, after an election, you take stock, and nobody is saying that you're going to go into the next election doing exactly what you did. But for now, we look forward to him winning that seat in Battle River Crowfoot, where our good friend Damien has stepped aside for that to happen, and we look forward to having him in the House.
Yeah, look, I get your argument on the top-line metrics, but he did lose his seat, right? So, I mean, that there is a message in that. I just wonder how you think he's interpreting that message, because I've never really seen him reflect on that publicly and what he took from that and how it might change how he approaches politics going forward.
Well, look, I told you before that I think certainly it's a setback for any MP, but I think he's going to work hard to to earn the trust and learn the people of at least that region in Alberta. He's born and raised there, so incredibly helpful in understanding the culture and the people. And I think as a reflection, I think he's got work to do to earn that trust. And I have no doubt, not only has that work started, that he's going to do it, and he's going to do it very successfully.
And what about on the larger issue, just as a final point, of a formal post-mortem? Like, I know the top-line metrics should talk about more than 8 million people, but it was like 8.5 for the Liberals, right? So there was growth and coalescing between the two historically dominant parties.
Sure.
But what sort of a formal post-mortem are you doing? I know Mr. Poilievre has been calling people. We've talked to some of the people we've spoken with, but just the bigger picture on the party that's independent from the leader. What's
look, I
happening
think
there?
there's lots of listening to do, lots of sort of take stock from those who worked on the campaign on the ground and in our movement for many years. And like I said, after every election, whether you win or you lose, you try to figure out what you can do and how you can do it better. And I think that work is ongoing with lots of members of the party.
Will there be something, though, that's formal and a report, to the caucus, a report?
Well, I'm not going to write you a report on
I don't expect to see it. I'm just curious for your party membership.
So we won't necessarily write the CBC a report, but certainly we'll take a look at what that means for us.
Okay, Melissa Lantsman, Deputy Conservative Leader. We appreciate your time.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
So there we go, gang. There is an interview where David Cochrane is almost tolerable. Almost. Melissa Lantsman, she's awesome to watch, explaining to Canadians that they're on Canadian side. If they see a chance to make improvements for Canadians, they're going to try. That's the way it seems to me. Let me know what you think in the comments about Melissa Lantsman, David Cochrane, and the CBC in general. Aaron, Canadian Looney, like, share, subscribe. We're learning and sharing about Canadian politics right here. That's it. Thank you all for watching. We'll catch you in the next video. Later, gang. Aaron, Canadian Looney. Like, share, subscribe.
What? Oh, yeah.